Hello and welcome to session 22 of the Basic Tax course. We're going to begin session 22 with a review of the session 2021 homework answer key. And of course, the session 2021 homework assignment was a wowzer, a very complex assignment involving preparation of a complex Schedule C and accompanying schedules for a self-employed business owned by Jean-Luc Picard. We asked you to prepare a variety of forms, including a Schedule C for the profit and loss on his business. And given all the information that we provided you, that is the first form we will take a look at. But I did want to point out some specific details that are really relevant to this assignment. And one of them is the fact that Jean-Luc purchased a going concern business. And because he purchased a going concern business, he's going to need to report the sale of that business on a form called 8594. Which is an asset acquisition statement. So we will be showing you that completed form as a part of this answer key. In addition, he also qualifies for the domestic production activities deduction, so we are filling out that form. Now, in purchasing his business, Jean-Luc purchased a going concern operation, and that going concern came with a variety of assets, one of which is inventory. And inventory is important because that will be a cost of purchase for inventory for the year, which is entered on Schedule C in the cost of goods sold section of Schedule C. We also have assets that he purchased as a part of the business or during the year, and they include equipment, furniture, computer system. And each of these assets needs to be listed on the asset acquisition statement, and again, they need to be listed on a depreciation schedule. There's a computer system costing $200,000, furniture costing $50,000, and equipment at $300,000. Then there is something called goodwill, and goodwill is a Section 197 intangible. It is an asset that needs to be disclosed on the asset acquisition statement. But when we move over to the Form 4562, where depreciation is claimed, goodwill is an amortizable item that is claimed in Part 6 of the form at the very bottom of page 2, as is the covenant not to compete. And then, of course, this little chart here shows that the total purchase price of the business is $1.1 million. In addition to the acquisition cost of the business, Jean-Luc had or incurred costs associated with acquiring the business. And these costs included an SBA loan origination fee, which is assessed on a 10-year loan at $15,000. And that SBA loan origination fee is amortizable over 10 years. There's also an SBA business appraisal fee, and this is allocated to startup costs. So his total acquisition cost of the business is $1,125,000. Now, in addition to the startup costs shown here, Jean-Luc also incurred travel expenses as he was traveling around making a decision what business to purchase. And those travel expenses, when we get to them, will also be another kind of startup or another amount that adds to startup. We provided you information in the wording of the problem about 2 vehicles that Jean-Luc used in his business. Both of those vehicles need to be accounted for on the Form 4562, so we will complete that, along with all of the information relating to the number of miles driven, the number that were personal, the number that were commute. We've provided you with a variety of expenses that Jean-Luc paid in the operation of his business, and we've also provided you with a P&L for his business, listing out a number of expenses that he paid for the year. And your job, of course, was to go through, interpret each and every expense, and put them on the correct line of his Schedule C and the various other forms. So let's get on with that. So as an overview of the answer key on this problem, let's begin at the top on page 1 of the answer key, where it states that the cost of purchasing enterprise must be broken down into component parts before Jean-Luc's tax return can be completed. The component parts are as follows. Firstly, we have startup costs. They totaled $25,000. $10,000 was for the SBA appraisal fee, and $15,000 was the research and travel expenses that Jean-Luc incurred over the 2-year period 2010-2011 as he was coming to a decision to buy the business. Now, under IRS rules, it is permissible to claim up to $5,000 of startup expense as a deduction in the year that business operations begin. Jean-Luc will take advantage of that particular rule, and he will then amortize the remaining $20,000 of startup costs over 15 years. And the software that we use, Drake Software, has really allocated all 25,000 of startup over to Form 4562 and has increased the amount of amortization deduction allowed by $5,000. It could be that your software, or if you were preparing this problem by hand, that you just hand wrote or directly entered on the other expense line of Schedule C startup costs as a deduction. And that's probably quite acceptable as well. If your computer or you just by $5,000, it could by hand that you, or if you were preparing this problem, or directly entered on the other expense line of Schedule C startup costs as a deduction. Acceptable as well. If you, and that's probably quite acceptable. Your computer, or you just by $5,000, just hand wrote $1,000. It could. I just wanted you to understand that our computer software put it all on the 4562, and when we get to it, you'll see what I mean. Now, other assets that need to be amortized or depreciated on Form 4562 include $300,000 for the equipment, and under ADS, we have a 10-year recovery period for the cost of that equipment. $50,000 for the furniture, also being depreciated ADS. That's a 10-year recovery period. Then there's $200,000 for the